Welcome to Global View. Today we have with us a true icon of American politics, a master strategist, a agent provocateur like no other, someone who needs no introduction, a bold voice, someone who speaks loud and everybody will listen to. Thanks for being our guest, Roger Stone. Welcome to Global View.
George, Simona, great to be back with you again. I wish what you said was true. I wish when I spoke, everybody would listen, but not everybody listens. But I'm delighted to be with you, certainly for one of the earliest episodes of your exciting new show. So it's delighted to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Roger. No, it's of course it's an incredible privilege and honor to have you. We've known each other a long time, so certainly we definitely wanted you to be one of the first initial guests to really get things moving, especially with the new Trump administration, and to help educate millions of Americans and hopefully millions across the world. So the first question I really had is it goes directly into your expertise regarding the JFK files and President Trump's executive order to declassify those files, RFK files, and Martin Luther King files. So the question I have to you is, one, why didn't he declassify during his first term? And secondly, why did he do it the first week of his second term? And what do you expect to find in these files?
Well, let's kind of back up. The Congress passed a law in the late 90s called the JFK Assassinations Record Act, which mandated that all of the files would be released unredacted in their totality in 2017, the first year of the Trump presidency. When I brought this to the president's attention, he actually was unaware of it. He had not been told by his staff that this time frame, this deadline had been set. And the way the law was structured is everything would be released unless the president acted affirmatively to either hold it back or to hold portions of it back. Ultimately, I urged the president to release all of this material in 2017. But as we have now learned, it was Mike Pompeo, the CIA director, who persuaded President Trump to hold back about 20% of the material. Now, he told me this at the time because I was disappointed, although we did learn an enormous amount of things about the Kennedy assassination from the material that he did release. But he told me this. He also told my friend, Judge Andrew Napolitano, the same thing. And just a few nights ago, he said it on Sean Hannity's show. I think the president has been persuaded, and he's actually said this, which he rarely does say, that not releasing it then was a mistake. I think that the galvanizing event was the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania, for which we still have more questions than we have answers. When you combine that with his rekindled relationship and political alliance with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's been very articulate in a number of podcasts and interviews regarding the many questions pertaining to the assassination of his own father, President Trump pledged during the campaign that he would release everything. Now, it's very important if you go to the White House website to recognize the process here. First, he essentially orders the national security apparatus and the director of national intelligence to come up with a plan for the release. And he gives them 15 days to do that. That 15 days means that during this week, we will get a copy of their plan to release the data. Then, under the presidential order, we have 45 days to actually execute the full release. Now, I can tell you right now, there are bureaucrats huddled around their computers trying to figure out how to hide portions of what the government has. And again, the president's order only applies to a very specific archive that is defined as the JFK assassination documents. I and other researchers have reason to believe that the government has additional information that would bear light on the events of November 22nd, 1963, as well as the assassinations of Senator Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, that this order probably does not address. I've been working with Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee to make sure that the American people will, after 50 years, learn everything. To go to the question of what to expect, I think it's important to recognize what I believe really happened here.
Mm.
2013, I wrote a book called The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. Uh, Needless to say, the New York Times, the Washington Post did not review my book, but it became a New York Times bestseller anyway, was reviewed by hundreds of publications in the country and around the world, was ultimately would be published in many languages. But the underlying thesis of my book is that there was a conspiracy, I hate that word, a plot, let's call it, that was directed by Lyndon Johnson because he was the man with the most to gain, but also the most to lose. He was under investigation in two very highly publicized corruption investigations, the Bobby Baker investigation. Bobby
Mhm.
Baker was the Secretary of the Senate, was essentially Johnson's fixer and bagman, and the Billy Saul Estes investigation. Billy Saul Estes was a flamboyant Texas wheeler dealer who was kicking back millions of dollars to Lyndon Johnson from agricultural contracts that he had gotten through the influence of LBJ. I believe that the shooter from the sixth floor of the Texas School Book Depository building is actually a man named Malcolm Mac Wallace. We know this because Wallace left his fingerprints on the window encasement and also on the cardboard boxes that they claim the shooter used as kind of a crow's nest. Now, just last week, in an amazing revelation of additional information, Alex Jones released an audio that is a conversation between Cliff Carter, the executive director of the Democrat National Committee, and Billy Saul Estes, who I just described, two of Johnson's cronies, in which Carter expresses his regret that Lyndon Johnson ordered Mac Wallace to kill JFK. So I think Johnson's
Mm.
role in this is now proven. What I expect to come out of the government documents is to finally, once and for all, nail down the CIA's involvement in the Kennedy assassination. This is why Mike Pompeo is the person who went in 2017 to the president to try to stop him from releasing this material. It's kind of obvious. He was a CIA director. Who was he trying to protect? He told the President Trump that the full release would expose the methods and sources of the agency. Well, first of all, there are no sources who are still alive. Virtually everyone involved in the Kennedy assassination is dead. And frankly, if the CIA is involved in the murder of an American president, well, that's something we need to know. So I think the CIA's role is going to come into view here, and that will be proven. The other players here are Big Texas Oil. I think they
Mhm.
financed the assassination because John Kennedy wanted to do away with the oil depletion allowance, the special tax break that would therefore cost the Texas oil barons millions and millions in additional taxes. The Secret Service, which very clearly stands down, much like they did in Butler, Pennsylvania. For example, the Texas School Book Depository building, because of its proximity to where Kennedy's car is going to be going through Dealey Plaza, should have been searched and sealed, but it wasn't. There were supposed to be plainclothes Secret Service agents throughout the crowd on both sides, but there weren't. The Secret Service manual specifically says at no time is the presidential limousine to come to a full stop, but it did. It comes to a stop sign, which makes, of course, JFK a sitting duck.
Mhm.
Now, recently, Paramount Films released a new documentary entitled What the Parkland Doctors Saw. These are the doctors who attended JFK at Parkland Hospital, and every one of them said that they saw multiple wounds in JFK that indicated that he'd been shot from the front and the back. That is, of course, completely contradicting the Warren Commission, who insists that he was killed by three shots, all fired by Lee Harvey Oswald, from the sixth floor of the Texas School Book Depository building. Well, if there are shots from the front and the back, that means multiple shooters. If there are multiple shooters, well, that means there was a conspiracy. Then, of course, there is organized crime. If you read the book of Sam Giancana's daughter, Antoinette Giancana, and you realize that there are jailhouse recordings from a government bug in which Giancana brags about the mob's role in Kennedy's assassination, they fall into place here. John Kennedy had taken $1 million from organized crime in the 1960 election. The mob boss had agreed to twist arms for him in Illinois and Texas, putting him over the top in a skin-tight victory over Vice President Richard Nixon. This is a deal engineered by Ambassador Joseph Kennedy, John Kennedy's father. But after JFK was elected, his brother, Robert Kennedy Sr., the Attorney General, rather than laying off the mob, he goes after the mob, trying to deport Carlos Marcello, the head of the mob in Texas and Louisiana, and Santo Trafficante, who is the vicious mobster who runs the Florida mob. So the mob's involvement involves payback because they have been betrayed by the Kennedys. There are multiple pieces here, but the upcoming revelations ordered by President Trump, I think, are going to mostly address the CIA role.
Mm-hmm.
I did hear from a very good source that among those who are adamantly opposing this release is the Israeli ambassador to the United States. Now, I find that very curious.
Yes.
I have always suspected Mossad involvement in Kennedy's murder simply because Israel at the time wanted nuclear weapons, which JFK would not let them have. JFK was also insisting that AIPAC file as a foreign agent under American law. Within 3 days of becoming president, LBJ allows Israel to have the nukes that they want, and the demands that AIPAC be registered as a federal agent are dropped by the Johnson administration. So this is yet another piece. I don't address the potential role of Israel in my book. I am researching it. I expect that I will put out a new version of my book with yet an additional chapter. So you can get my book, by the way, before we get there, you get my book by going to stonezone.com, stonezone.com. I only offer the paperback version because it has 3 additional chapters that were not in the hardcover. So if you want to go to Amazon and give your money to a multinational corporation that hates your guts, you can buy it there. Or you can go to stonezone.com, go to the store, and you can get a signed copy there, and I'll even personalize it for you. But the paperback version is far superior.
It's a very timely book. I will order one from the Stone Zone as well. But it looks like the Warren report, just a last question on the topic, really shows us that the deep state is operating with similar techniques already back on time. And you are being a pioneer of understanding these dynamics. What do you think, how do you think the deep state evolved in its tactics from then to now? And do you think it's more in our face, it's more shameless today?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to recognize that Dwight Eisenhower, who was one of our greatest presidents, he really doesn't get the credit he deserves because he was very low key. But he was a great 2-term president. But in his final days, be leaving office, he actually gives a speech in which he warns us about the military-industrial complex. That is the accumulation of power by unelected bureaucrats inside the national security apparatus, in the think tanks, in the defense contracting industry, in the Congress, who are committed to a path that was not approved by the American voters. Today, we call the military-industrial complex the deep state. John Kennedy was clearly killed by these forces, as I say, not only Lyndon Johnson running the show as E. Howard Hunt, one of the Watergate burglars, but a longtime CIA operative, confesses on his deathbed that Johnson was running the show in Dallas and that he, Hunt, was on the ground in Dallas. In fact, 4 of the Watergate burglars during the break-in had been on the ground in Dealey Plaza I think this proves yet again the CIA's involvement because those four were actively on the payroll of the CIA during Watergate. What this means is I think that the deep state takeover of American government begins with the murder of Kennedy. They removed Richard Nixon in a silent coup. That's because they knew in the wake of Kennedy's assassination, they probably could not get away with actually killing him, although there is an assassination attempt on Nixon in Miami, which has received very little media coverage at the time and today. And we know that they tried to kill Ronald Reagan unsuccessfully in an assassination attempt shortly after his election. My next book is actually on the Reagan assassination because the government has never released a final report. And there are a number of vexing issues there. For example, John Hinckley Jr., the man who was convicted of trying to kill Reagan, is always in front of Reagan, shooting from a crouching position, shooting upwards. He gets off 4 shots. All 4 shots are accounted for, but none of them hit Reagan. Reagan was hit from above and behind, and therefore Hinckley cannot be the shooter. And there's a 15-minute delay between the time that James Brady, Reagan's press secretary, who was shot in the head, and Reagan both leave in 2 different cars, obviously, to George Washington University Hospital. But Brady gets there 15 minutes before Reagan. Where is Reagan? Interesting question. Then, when Reagan gets to George Washington Hospital and he's X-rayed, the doctors can't find a bullet, and they're really not really clear on how serious his wounds are. They're about to sew him back up when one doctor insists on doing a manual examination, and he removes from Reagan a projectile known as a flechette. This is about the size of a dime, shape of a dime, fired from a specific weapon that was identified in the 1970 Church hearings as a weapon designed by the CIA specifically for the purposes of assassinations. Usually, the flechette projectile is dipped in some kind of poison. In this case, it was not. So we need the truth about the Reagan assassination yet. When I spoke to President Trump the other night, I urged him to go further and release all of the government's documents pertaining to that as well.
We certainly agree with that, Roger. And I guess going off of the various threats that these various former presidents posed to the deep state, the military-industrial complex, and to the globalist agenda, if you want to call it that. If superficially, when you look at President Trump, he's a populist economic nationalist. He was that as a candidate, and he was that as a first-term president, and he certainly has started his second term along those same lines. So he's actually very pro-U.S. military. He's pro-U.S. energy. He's actually being extremely tough on our adversaries, from Iran to China to Russia. He seeks to renegotiate trade deals that have absolutely decimated U.S. industries. We've seen this with punitive tariffs that he's levying against various countries, both allies and foes. So the question is simple: who is he a direct threat to that actually would result in these last 2 assassination attempts? And moving forward, do you think his life is in danger based on any of these various agendas that he might be threatening?
He's an existential threat to the deep state. And I think that became clear during the campaign. Oddly enough, I think his 4 years in the wilderness after not being awarded the 2020 election, which I believe he actually won, actually gave him an opportunity to think and to plan and to be more prepared. And plus what they put him through, George, they put him through what they put me through, what they put you through, what they put our good friend General Flynn through. All the tactics used against me at trial, the refusal to move the venue to a place where I could get a fair jury, the refusal of an epically biased judge to remove me, the fact that the jury forewoman in my case lied about her knowledge of the case, said she didn't know who I was, but then we learned that for a year before she was even selected as a juror, she was attacking me on Twitter and Facebook by name. She was attacking President Trump When all of that came out, I should have been given a new trial at a minimum, but the judge ruled that none of these hateful things that she'd said about me online had any bearing on her ability to be an unbiased juror in my case. Absurd.
Crazy.
Mm.
So I think that he understands that he is a threat. This is why he's moved swiftly to clean out the FBI. He's moved swiftly to clean up the Justice Department. It is why Elon Musk, incredible, shutting down, first of all, shedding light on the illegal activities of the USAID and shutting it down. These are sweeping changes. But to go to the second part of your question, this is my greatest single concern.
Mhm.
I pray about this every night for the safety of the president and his family. They tried to kill him twice. There is no question about that. The questions that come out of Butler, Pennsylvania, that remain unanswered. How is it possible the Secret Service, local law enforcement, and state law enforcement know there's a man with a gun inside the sealed perimeter for 92 minutes? They've seen him using a rangefinder, but nobody tells Trump, and nobody tells the detail directly around Trump. Why wasn't Trump evacuated immediately, which is what the Secret Service manual requires? Why were the state, local, and federal authorities on three different radio frequencies? They couldn't speak to each other. Why did the Secret Service turn down an offer by the local police to conduct a drone surveillance of the entire area prior to the event? 2 times the local police offered, and the Secret Service said, no, we'll take care of it. But we now know they never did a drone surveillance. In fact, they couldn't even get the expensive drone technology that they had to work. You had a Secret Service official on the 800 service number with the company that provided the technology trying to get the drones to work. Sorry, I don't think this is incompetence. I think it was willful. The events in West Palm Beach are even more egregious. How does a man who they tell us is indigent, behind in his house payments, behind in his alimony payments, how does he get to Florida? Who paid for his flight to Florida? Who paid to his flight to London, to Paris, to Ukraine, to all these other European capitals where we have seen video, and still photograph footage of? Who paid for his website in which he's trying to recruit mercenary soldiers to fight in Ukraine? Uh, uh, they tell us in Butler that they can't get into the encrypted data in the accused shooter, a man named well, I lose it now, but the gentleman they said is the shooter, but and Apple refuses to turn over that data. Yet Apple was more than happy to give Robert Mueller all of my data without even getting a subpoena. So yes, I think his life will continue to be in danger as long as he's president of the United States. I'm glad he took his official swearing in inside rather than doing it in public. Never mind the bitter cold. But I'm glad that he now controls the Secret Service, and I hope he will take every single precaution to protect his life.
And I believe that God spared the Trump life for a reason and is fully embracing it. He has done more in 10 days than many others in 2 mandates. Now, you have been a President Trump mentor for decades. How do you see his political evolution? How would you describe this aggressive approach into delivering his promises this time?
Well, I would be an overstatement to say that I'm a mentor. I've certainly been a friend of his now for almost 50 years. I wanted him to run for president as early as 1988. Tried to get him to run again in 2000. Tried to get him to run again in 2012. I was very happy when he decided to run in 2016. I do think that he has been changed a little bit by his experience in Butler, Pennsylvania. It's interesting that pastors used to complain to me that they love Trump and they wish he would talk more about his faith. Now he talks openly about his faith, as he did in his inaugural address, as he did at the Republican convention. He realizes that his life was spared, but for an 18th of an inch, he would not even be with us today. So God spared his life. I believe he understands that he has been anointed by God to make America great again, that his life was saved for this moment. I feel the same way. I mean, trying to send me to prison for 7 to 9 years in a COVID-infested prison when they knew that I had a lifetime history of asthma was a death sentence. Here's how we silenced Roger Stone. I could never have raised the money for an appeal. The judge's illegal and unconstitutional actions in my case were overwhelming. I would have been exonerated on appeal, but I could never have gotten to appeal. How would I raise money sitting in jail for approximately 2 years it would take to get my case to appeal? And in the District of Columbia, trust me, you will never get a fair trial. It is literally impossible. So again, I kind of have the same feeling that my life was spared for this time and to do the important work that I am doing. I'm not paid to do this, but I work very hard to try to make sure through my own network of contacts and people I know that the president's great appointees like Kash Patel and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard are confirmed in the U.S. Senate. So look, we are all put here for this moment. George, you were spared for this moment, and this is why we are happy warriors in the MAGA army to make America great again.
You're absolutely right. Roger, I think we definitely were spared, and we certainly were put through the ringer. President Trump, his family was put through the ringer, others, Paul Manafort, General Flynn, Carter Page, dozens of others. And at the end of the day, over 75 million Americans who voted for President Trump, they were the ultimate victims, where their vote was they attempted to usurp and replace their vote. So I want to go back to the assassination attempt of President Trump. They say that dead men tell no tales. One of the assassins is dead. The other is sitting apparently in custody in Florida. What is the latest on this individual and Governor DeSantis's approach to dealing with this particular case? Are we ever going to get testimony out of this person? Are we ever going to see Governor DeSantis cooperate in this investigation to bring truth to light? Where does this stand in Florida, where you are?
Well, look, generally speaking, as you know, I'm a critic of Governor DeSantis on a number of issues, but on this issue, it would be unfair to criticize him. He pledged immediately to have the state and the state Florida Department of Law Enforcement conduct an independent investigation into what happened in West Palm Beach. He has been completely thwarted by the federal government. They refuse to cooperate in any way with the state of Florida. They will not make any evidence or the witness available for questioning by state officials. So the governor, I think, is made a bold move here. Typical of Ron DeSantis, he got great press coverage when he did it, but there will be no state investigation into the West Palm events because the federal government, even today, will not cooperate. Now, hopefully that will change now that President Trump is in control, but we shall see. Thomas Matthew Crooks, that's the man who they say shot at President Trump. There's a central question here, which is, Crooks was on the roof of a building that should have been searched and sealed, number one. Number two, we know that a government counter sniper has Crooks in his sight, sees him pointing a rifle at the President of the United States, but he delays until he gets off 8 rounds before he shoots and kills him. Actually, he was actually shot first by a local police officer, which disabled him, but did not kill him. Why did that sniper wait so long? What was he waiting for? Well, he was waiting for the kill shot on Trump. We do need to get to the bottom of this.
And Roger, you have been part of the most defining moments of American history, and you have done it with style. Now, I know we share Italian roots, and I've been always so fascinated by your signature looks. Is there a political statement behind these looks? Is that part of your aura? And if you could advise as a political strategist, upcoming political class in the future, which advice would you give?
Well, first of all, I appreciate your acknowledging my Italian heritage. As you know, I'm half Hungarian and half Italian.
Okay.
I'm Italian from the waist down. And, if you read my book, Stone's Rules, which has an introduction by my good friend Tucker Carlson, the foreword, you'll find the rules there, I think, for any young man who is starting out in a career, doesn't matter where your career is. The way you are dressed, the way you are groomed is how you present yourself to the world. You never get, as they say, a second chance to make a first impression. So look great, feel great is one of my rules. But also, I don't expect everybody to dress like me. I have my own style. People need to be encouraged to develop their own style. But it is not expensive to be well dressed. There are a lot of shortcuts. If you go to stonezone.com, I've written a couple pieces on guiding people to where they can go to websites like Etsy.com. Was one that I really like. There are others where you can buy gently used garments or garments that have actually never been used. They're called new old stock.
Vintage.
Vintage,
I
There you
love
go.
it.
at bargain basement prices. I recommend this. But look, there's never any excuse for not looking your best, particularly if you're trying to present to the public or to an employee or to a client. I think that dressing the part, if all the world is a stage, well, then you should always be in costume, I guess is the way I would put it. And I think it's vitally important. George has adopted a great personal style. He's really come along. When I first met the guy, he was wearing t-shirts and shorts.
He's not
Okay,
Italian, but he's doing a great job.
Italian. He aspires to be Italian. Sorry, sorry. Only Simona and I could be Italian. Sorry.
Exactly. Sorry.
I, I'm just a protege here, Roger. I'm doing my best, but certainly you've inspired millions, including myself, in terms of both fashion and your political expertise. And you are a dear friend as well, so we really do appreciate that time. I have one last question for you, Roger. Moving forward, what do you expect will be the lasting legacy of the Trump 2.0 administration? When we look back in 4 years from now, what will be the seminal moments that will define this presidency?
He's going to be the president who brings back a golden age. This is going to be a golden age of peace,
Mhm.
prosperity, security, and justice, an age of law and order. It'll be the age in which we go back to what happened in his first term, putting America first. In every judgment, in every issue facing the country, they must be seen through the prism of what is good for America, not what is good for our allies, not what's good for our trading partners, not as good what is good for our enemies, and we do have them, but what is best for America. This is the most consequential presidency in my lifetime, and that's saying a lot because I think Ronald Reagan was a very great president. I think Richard Nixon was a very great president. He got a strategic arms limitation agreement with the Soviets. He ended the war in Vietnam. He opened the door to China at a time that China was a dirt poor agrarian society with no technology. They barely had electricity. They didn't have inside toilets in most homes in China. So those who say, oh, well, Nixon should be blamed for the fact that China is our greatest adversary, Nixon had no way of knowing that Bill Clinton and his wife would give the Chinese most favored nation trading status. That's what made them a superpower. And they would actually sell the Clintons would sell the Chinese some of our top military secrets regarding our missile targeting technology in return for illegal campaign contributions. So Trump will go down in history as the president that made the country great again and send it on a new path, restoring our constitutional liberties, particularly, for example, in the area of censorship. Had we not had a free, unfettered internet in 2016, Trump would never have been elected. They moved aggressively to try to put the toothpaste back in the tube, to try to cut people like George and I and others off from having free access to social media. I'm still banned today on Facebook. I'm still banned today on Instagram. They never justified that. By the way, folks, if anybody on Facebook approaches you and wants to sell you crypto and says they're Roger Stone, I'm not on Facebook.
Impersonating on Facebook.
Do
Okay.
not buy any crypto from anybody on Facebook
Thanks
claiming
for
to be
letting me.
Roger Stone because I'm not on Facebook.
Wow. Thank you so much, Roger. It's been a tremendous pleasure to have you with us today, and I hope you will be back soon on Global View. Thank you.
Great to be with you, and I hope to see you soon. I hope you will finally come to your senses and abandon Los Angeles, Florida, the Sunshine State. We would love to have you here, and I guess I'll see you in just a few days.
Yes, we'll certainly have wonderful neighbors in the sunny
Absolutely.
state.
Thank you,
Thank you
Roger.
so much, Roger.
God bless you.
See you
Great to be.
soon.
God bless.
Bye bye.